Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my interview series. Today, I'm talking to Clive De Carle, who is a health educator. We're going to be talking about food, health and supplements and the benefits of all of that. Clive, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Richard. Great to be with you.
Now, I'd like to say that on Clive very kindly got in touch with me a few weeks ago now and interviewed me about my situation and the way the channel had gone. And you introduced me to your supplements, which I have still here. You very kindly sent them to me. Let's just show them off here. Here we go. And you've got a massive range. We'll get into how you came about doing all of that and what they are good for. For a lot of people do buy supplements from all sorts of different places, and we'll find out whether that's a good idea or a bad idea or all of that. So we'll have a look at those in detail. But Clive, I gather that you were into ophthalmology. Is that the right terminology? Into the eyes and glasses and contact lenses and all of that at one point in your life.
Exactly.
And it's funny because I say it's funny, it's not funny at all. Used to wear contact lenses and I had a bug, Canthamoeba cariitis, I think it's called, that got into my contact lens from water. I was away, was unable to change my contact lenses, and subsequently it got into my eye at the cornea, went into a cyst, and eventually over a protracted 4 years, 3 cornea transplants later, I had to have the eye removed and a false eye. So I now have a huge respect and slight reservation for contact lenses because of the issue that I went. So tell me a little bit about contact lenses. Are they safe for people?
Well, it depends how sensible one is. Clearly, if
Clearly,
you
yeah,
have a
I
problem,
wasn't very sensible.
well, you always have to carry a pair of spectacles with you if you can't cope without them. And if there's the slightest bit of problem, you have to take them out.
Yes.
And then it would be great to have for contact lens, whereas to have, for instance, a little bottle of perhaps colloidal silver or a natural eye drop that they could use to overcome a problem. Colloidal silver works very well in the eyes. It's ever so cheap. You can make it yourself at home with a small kit.
Gosh. Oh, okay. So you
Otherwise, sea salt in water diluted would be great to calm things down.
And if you've got a lot of people, of course, have sore eyes after looking at screens and their phones for any length of time, and that people get worried. Always, am I damaging my eyes? What would you suggest for that if you've got sore eyes?
Well, try and use the computer screen less.
Less.
Try when possible to look. In front of me is a window, so every now and then I rest my eyes and just look out and focus on trees in the distance. And so I'm constantly switching my vision from close to far. I also get up and walk around a lot. I've got something called Flux, an app, Flux, Flux, where you can dim the light. You can take the blue out of it, so you can make the screen go much pinker, and you can set that to come on at dusk, for instance. And the first day I set it, I'm working away. I do a lot of work on the computer, and suddenly the screen went pink, and my eyes went, oh, it was such a relief.
Really?
Blew out, yeah.
Yeah. So the blue strains the eye in some way, does it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a lot of what makes us tired. I mean, obviously people sometimes don't blink enough, which sounds ridiculous. Then of course are your eyes dry through lack of water? Are you forgetting to drink?
Yes.
Somebody once told me the answer is you have two things on your desk, a jug and a glass, and if either one is empty, you fill it. Because when the water is over there in the kitchen or something,
Yes.
but if it's in front of you, it's more of a prompt. Then, funnily enough, it's women who mainly get dry eyes more than men. And
Oh,
it relates to a lack of testosterone,
right.
a
Oh,
hormone
right.
imbalance, yeah. And so um, anybody who has dry eyes might want to have their hormone levels checked, just see whether it's related to their hormones. It might be quite simple.
There you go. So tell us about how you transition from working with eyes and glasses and well, contact lenses into what you now do as a health educator. And we've already seen how already you're giving us some health advice because you had a bit of a health scare yourself.
Well, I did. I was really stupid. In my very early 30s, I had some spots on my face. And I thought, I'm much too old to have spots on my face. And I was already into natural medicine, but something weird overtook me and I went to see a doctor. I mean, what was I thinking? And the doctor, God knows what they were thinking, gave me an antibiotic.
Right.
Anyway, the next thing I know, I'm having visual problems. I become type 1 diabetic. I develop rheumatoid arthritis. And from being fit and healthy, I suddenly got to a stage where I could no longer get out of bed. I couldn't dress myself. I was, well, they put me in hospital. There was nothing else that could be done. And for
Gosh.
weeks and weeks, I was deteriorating really rapidly. And they kept on offering me drugs. But I said, look, I'm not low on drugs.
Mm. Yeah,
Something's wrong, but it's not a shortage of drugs.
absolutely.
They couldn't quite understand that, but they went along with it, thankfully. I had to go onto insulin because I was type 1 diabetic by then. Um, but if you'd looked at me, you would have thought I was 100 years old. I had, what happens with rheumatoid arthritis, it all gets inflamed and nasty. And while I was in hospital, I was able to read books. And after 3 weeks, I figured it out. I figured
Ah,
what had happened and what I needed to do. So my wife wheeled me out in a wheelchair, and I went to see a guy called Patrick Holford, who's still around. And he explained to me the minerals and vitamins and so on that I was lacking, and the fact the antibiotics had affected my gut and knocked out the healthy bacteria, which normally are able to extract the vitamins and minerals from the food that you eat. So it took a year and a half, but all the arthritis went away. And the doctor said, that's not possible. It can never happen. Give
never
up.
happened. No.
But here I am. That was about 37 years ago.
Good
And
gracious.
I haven't got a pain in my body, no problem. And then I used to get colds every year. And I thought it was normal. I thought that was what normally happens 3 or 4 times a year or whatever it is. You get the flu or cold or whatever it's called. And then I think it was probably Dr. Mercola who explained about vitamin D. And I suddenly realized that that was the problem. I only got them in winter generally. So I started taking vitamin D in winter. That was the only change I made. And I didn't get another cold again.
Isn't that
Stopped.
amazing? That is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, for some people, they need more than just vitamin D. They might need some vitamin C. They might need some zinc. But partly how I started on this journey, after I got well, my dad's best friend, who was a banker in New York, he explained to me he got cancer for the second time and he didn't think he was going to live. And but he refused to take the drugs, and it was kidney cancer, and they'd taken out one kidney, so he didn't have another one left to lose.
No.
Anyway, he's on his way to the doctor's office when 6 guys in New York try to mug him. At this point, he hasn't taken the chemo, so he's still strong,
Mm.
but he's convinced he's going to die anyway. So he beats all 6 of them up and they run away. Keep his watch and his wallet. Goes to the doctor's office, and the doctor says, well, I've got good news. The cancer's gone. What did you do? And he said to me, if I'd known that I was going to live, I would have given them everything I had, wouldn't
Yeah.
have bought them. And what he'd done is he'd contacted Linus Pauling, who was the only person at that time to win the Nobel Prize twice. And he was on the front cover of Time magazine saying the cure for the common cold, which was, in his opinion, vitamin C. And he lived till 93, so he didn't do too badly. Anyway, he'd phoned up Linus Pauling, found him in the New York phone book. And he said, well, I can't cancer for the second time. What do I do? And Linus Pauling said, look, take 35 grams of vitamin C in divided doses every day. He lived another 20 years, and when he did die, it wasn't from cancer.
Gosh.
So, and he knew what I'd done, so he was doing a bit of what I'd done as well,
Yes.
vitamins and minerals. But nevertheless, I suddenly saw vitamin C as this incredible thing. And there's a great book by a medical doctor, Dr. Thomas Levy, called Curing the Incurable, which is all about the use of vitamin C in a myriad of situations. And so back in January 2020, when the COVID ridiculous started, I started putting out videos about vitamin C and its benefits for, colds, flus, that kind of thing. And so I immediately got removed from YouTube, which was upsetting at that point.
Yes, I can imagine.
But it's important that people understand that there are some very inexpensive supplements out there, that can fill the gaps that we're not getting from food. Because, as you know, I think everybody knows the soil has been virtually decimated with agriculture, using chemicals.
Industrial farming.
Yeah. Um, uh,
It's interesting you said about vitamin C. I've been reading a book in which they were talking about cures for cancer, which people were poo-pooing, or the big pharma was saying was not a thing, and that was intravenous vitamin C, because you couldn't get enough orally, but actually having it injected into you or intravenously put into you, it was a possible thing. So what does this say about going to the doctor, for example, in your situation, in which they look at it and see, well, rather than fitting the cause of the problem, we'll just fit the symptoms or correct the symptoms, and giving you the antibiotic, which then had a complete adverse effect on you and pretty much crippled you.
well, I'm still type 1 diabetic, which is boring. I'd like to point out, for legal reasons, that if either of us use the words cancer or cure, we're spelling them with a K, because spelling them with a C would not be legal because of the 1939 Cancer Act.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
you learn something every day on the channel. So yes, spelling them definitely with a K. So yes,
So
it's
doctors are curing symptoms, aren't they? It's just outrageous. They're not looking at the body as a whole. They don't ask, how was your childhood? Have you got some poor dental work that's causing your problems? They are not taught cures. They go to 5 years, 6 years of medical school. They're not taught how to cure people. They're taught how to treat people, which is, well, you've got this symptom. Here's a drug. It'll help. It'll probably kill you in the end, but no, we're not worried about that. I don't know how doctors do the job, because you know, people come, I'm not doing consultations anymore, but when I did, people would come to me with arthritis or whatever it is, and I'd give them a few dietary bits of advice and a few minerals like magnesium, and it would be fixed. Whereas the doctors, day after day, are seeing, wonderful people coming in, and they're getting worse, and the drugs are having the side effects. And I don't know how the doctors live with themselves when they're seeing clearly the success rate is terrible. I mean, look at the cancer survival rate. People are shocked by, when they really look into it. It's about 3%, the survival rate, long term. Now, doctors say if you're still alive 5 years later, that was a success. You might be half dead. You might have lost your hair and have been a cripple for the last 4.5 years or something. If you make it one day past 5 years, that was a cure. Not in
gosh.
my book.
Yes, no. And if you've had to endure those 5 years in additional pain and suffering, it's arguable whether you wanted those 5 years or not. So you look much more holistically and with supplements to the food, because as you were just alluding to, the soil, especially in the industrial farming that we have been doing now really since the Second World War, in which we've stripped the soil, we've got rid of the diversity of the landscape, and our food is heavily processed as well. Pretty much the vital things in our foods that we need, or things that we consider to be food, is arguably not food at all. And so this is where an area that you now you specialize in. And as I said, I've got a whole load of stuff because you started to manufacture your own supplements. Can you tell us why you did that? And are there anything wrong, or perhaps wrong isn't the right word? If there's, I guess some supplement. What I'm trying to say is some supplements presumably are not as wholesome or full of everything you need, or perhaps there's things added, just like processed food is.
Oh,
That was a long-winded way of saying, tell us about your supplements.
okay. So when I started, which was probably, I don't know, 16 years ago, something like that, selling supplements, if you went into Holland and Barrett at that time, they were owned by the Carlyle Group. Now, as you may or may not know, the Carlyle Group are arms dealers.
Oh, are they? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so you can trust arms dealers with your health, can't you?
Well,
They've got your best interests at heart. Obviously, you can tell by the business that owns it's sold now.
mm,
Solgar, the same deal. Um, basically, it would, wouldn't it, suit the pharmaceutical industry to buy out the biggest players in the natural supplement market and corrupt the products one way or another. So what I realized and why I started the company was that you can walk into the best health food store around that's got loads of supplements on the wall, but who taught them which ones are good? Well, the salespeople from the reps from the company taught them which ones are the ones to sell. So
mm,
they don't know. It's too complicated. They don't know. So I realized actually there's a market for the best. And my
yes.
dad, who was also in ophthalmic optics, he had this poster above his desk which said, "My tastes are simple. I just like the best." And his explanation of things was that, look, if it's the best, it'll probably last the longest. It's probably the most sensible buy in the long run. And um, I thought, well, that's a really good sort of way to do things. Let's get the best because I've got an ego to support. I don't want people to say I tried your supplements and they didn't work. I want them to say, I'm God, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah. And
um,
and business wise, it's in your best interest to have something that people will come back for rather than go, well, I'll try somewhere else next time.
well, quite exactly. Our return rate is incredible. I think it's about 84% people buying again, which is way above most averages because the stuff works. And
So how do you know? So there you are. You've got a product from a large health shop that is claiming this, that, and the other, and you've got one of yours or an equivalent of good quality. How do you know yourself that it works? You can tell, for example, if something's too sweet or too sour or too salty, immediately you swallow something. This might be an easy question, of course, but how would you know that it is the pills that you've been swallowing or the supplements that have been formed into pills that are actually doing the health benefits and not anything else in the world around you that's done it?
okay, well, with many of the core ingredients that make us up, like the vitamin C, like sunshine vitamin D, like magnesium, like zinc, um, if you if you lack one of those things, you might get colds, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc. If you've got pain, you're probably lacking magnesium as your number one. You might be missing a couple of other minerals and stuff. But one of my favorite examples, you might have come across a radio broadcaster in the States called Crow 777. I've been on his show a few times, and the very first time, like with you, I sent a little package of supplements. And he explained right at the beginning of the show that he had trigger finger. He couldn't straighten it. It was locked like that. And his sister had the same thing and had just had an expensive operation that she was still recovering from. I said, well, look, trigger finger, that's almost certainly a magnesium deficiency. Why don't you take the vitamin C and magnesium that I've sent you now? So mixed it up with some water, drank it. 1 hour later, on the radio show, his finger straightens. One
Wow.
hour, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that's going to happen every time,
No.
but when you know what the causes are,
Yes.
you know what to do to correct it. So magnesium, really, if I was to say number one that fixed my arthritis, it was magnesium. But you see, if you go into a shop and you get the bottle and you look at the label, they'll probably say take one or two. Now, what I say with people who've got very serious magnesium deficiency, I suggest you take one or two 6 times a day. In other words, try 12.
Right.
I'm not saying you need to do that for more than a day or two, but if you're basement level low on magnesium, you take a lot. In a very short time, you might notice the difference. I had one woman who was suicidally depressed and really seriously suicidal. And I told her to take 12 a day for 3 days. The end of the second day in the evening, she rings me up and say, well, I'm not suicidal anymore. She'd taken 24 magnesium capsules. And I'm not saying she was dancing around with happiness, but she had decided not to kill herself now.
Wow.
And
So, so can you overdose on the supplements themselves?
well, it's possible to take too much of everything.
Yeah.
Luckily, in certain circumstances, the body's self-regulating. Take vitamin C and magnesium as examples. If you take too much, either over a day or at a time, the body self-regulates and you're in the bathroom with diarrhea.
Right. Right. Oh, okay. That's a
Um,
good way of knowing, isn't it?
yeah, you can't miss that one.
No.
And the stomach might gurgle, telling you, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Um, that happens more with vitamin C than with magnesium. Magnesium, most people can tolerate a lot. And magnesium's core function is relaxation. So we're all stressed, and the body copes with that stress by burning up our magnesium reserves. If we start to burn up our magnesium reserves, we lose body alkalinity. And alkalinity of the body directly affects the voltage of the cells of our body. So if we go from alkaline to acid, our voltage goes from negative, where it should be, to positive. They're absolutely interrelated. I've got a video I did a decade or so ago with an American ophthalmologist called Dr. Jerry Tennant, called Healing is Voltage, which explains the importance of getting the pH of the body right. It's not to say that most people pursue alkalinity just through diet, but there are other ways to do it, and magnesium is one of them. You've got enough magnesium, not only is the body more alkaline and balanced, but it relaxes every cell of your body. So it relaxes the heart. People having a heart attack, an intelligent emergency room doctor would inject them with Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate, which anything sulfate is water soluble. And they can stop a heart attack in seconds.
Gosh.
In seconds. So imagine somebody's got angina, or they've got palpitations, that kind of thing, rapid heartbeat, irregular heartbeat. Take some magnesium, calm it right down.
So I've got your magnesium here,
Yeah.
which is in capsule forms. Is it presumably this is magnesium's in food, certain foods?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you can get a
green
certain
leaf-
amount.
Green leafy vegetables, chocolate. Anybody who's craving chocolate, there are lots of great things in chocolate, but you might be after the magnesium in there, possibly. Um, so it's in food, but was it in the soil the food was grown in?
Yes.
Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, those three, NPK, the common fertilizer that was after World War One, when the bomb industries closed down. What did they do with them? Turn them into fertilizer factories. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, they were what made bombs. Anyway, you put those on the soil and stuff will grow. But if you've killed all the insects with the chemicals, they're not making the minerals anymore. You're taking. When I was young, they used to burn the stubble to the ground after the harvest, putting all the minerals back. Vitamins get damaged by heat, but minerals don't. But now you're not allowed to do that. We've been doing it for centuries, burning it down to the ground. So every harvest of wheat, say, or barley or oats or whatever, they're stripping the minerals out and throwing them away or dumping them somewhere else.
Yeah, which is ludicrous.
Faster.
So you can get again, it comes back down to the soil. If the soil is depleted, while you might grow something, and on the industrial way that it is grown, it may end up and look great in the supermarket, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's full of goodness and the minerals and nutrients that you need and the vitamins. Whereas organic, presumably that process is going to be a lot more healthy.
Well, one would hope so. I mean, I had an organic farm in Spain for 10 years, and I paid my money to the organization who came around and tested the soil, which had passed because it had never been poisoned. But I said to them, what does it take to pass soil here in Spain? They said, well, we almost pass everybody after 3 years if it's been left without chemicals, but we always pass people in 5 years. But I mean, how long does it take for soil to recover? 500 years? I mean, I have no idea, but 5 would be, that would be hopeful, I think. So in the next 9 years, did they ever come again to test what I was doing? No.
Oh, I see. Once you were passed, that was it.
Well, they took my money every year.
Oh, right. Yes. To give you your license to say I am organic. We haven't tested it. I suppose they're just going on, the fact that you have said, you've declared that I haven't sprayed it with anything dodgy.
Well, they didn't even ask for that. They just took the money and that was it.
Oh, right. That's amazing.
So when the first year I was farming, my next door neighbor farm had almond trees. And one day I'm walking up the land and I look over and his whole field is dead. All the almond trees have died. I said, what happened? He said, oh, well, we've just joined the EU and they were giving the stuff away virtually. It was like, I don't know, 75p or something for 25 kilos. So it's so cheap, I put on double, killed the whole field. So
Gosh.
people poisoning themselves, and they just, we're accidentally poisoning the children, granny.
Yeah. So clearly you can't trust, because you don't know unless you grow it yourself. I mean, it comes back to so much where taking the responsibility for your health, you can't trust it if it's in big commercial pills as a supplement. You can't trust the food if it's largely produced because it's a race to the bottom to get the prices down. So unless you do a lot yourself, or you've got independent firms who you can test and then discover their reliability, and I think more people are waking up to that sense that they need to take a little bit more responsibility for their health and how they go forward. So when it comes to things like supplements, how do you know, firstly, what you're lacking? And secondly, how do you know how much to take? Because I guess the advice could fluctuate depending on to whom you speak.
Yeah, absolutely massively. So um, I've been making videos for years and years and years explaining how much selenium might work for you, how much magnesium might work for you. But yeah, this should have been taught to us at school. Let's say we were 15 or something. Um, understanding that, just understanding what the deficiencies are. I mean, I can run through a few more just to put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Anybody who's constipated is almost certainly low on magnesium. Anybody who's got heart problems, magnesium. Any pain, arthritis, magnesium. Headaches, epilepsy, migraines, magnesium. Muscle cramps, twitches, magnesium. Restless leg, magnesium. It goes on and on and on. So it's number one. Number one, magnesium is the one you're likely to be low on if you're not feeling happy, if you're not sleeping well, all these things. And it's so inexpensive relatively. The one that you held up is actually a blend of 4 different types.
Oh, right. Oh, yes. Magnesium blend.
Yeah, because each magnesium does slightly different things. A lot of people buy magnesium citrate, which is great, but if you take too much of it, you end up with diarrhea before you've had the full effect.
Oh, I see. So you're then likely to have stopped.
Yeah, and it's the same with the one, even now in Holland and Barrett, I think I can say this, the one that says magnesium in the biggest letters near the front that's really inexpensive, just the price you want, is magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is hardly bioavailable at all. So you will end up in the bathroom way before you've got enough magnesium to affect anything. So a lot of people say, oh, well, I tried magnesium. I tried, that one. It didn't work. But so how much to take is to some degree on the label. But I recommend people really at this point self-educate yourself. Can you trust the doctors? Well, most people would say no, not after.
Not after the pandemic.
No. So can you trust anybody to give you real advice? Well, it's quite difficult. There are people, I mentioned a couple of them, like Dr. Mercola, who's incredible, the most visited health website in the world, and he's giving advice which is really wonderful. When they started censoring me in 2014, when I was working with UK Column as their health correspondent, and they took me off YouTube then. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to have this. So I started a private members club because you can give information behind a club that you can't give publicly.
Yes.
So I started this club called secrethealthclub.com, and all stuff they don't want you to see. I basically put in a big A to Z so you can just look up the answers to a lot of issues. I hate to say all of them, but
No.
at the end of the day, we're meant to be in good health. We're meant to be happy. That should be the norm. People now expect to be ill, which is absurd. So when you understand we're just made up of a few basic components, and it's so easy to tell which ones are missing. For instance, some people might look at their fingernails. They might see ridges. That might be indicative of silica deficiency, one or two things. You can look up a chart online, put in fingernail analysis, if you've got white dots on your fingernails, that's usually a zinc deficiency. Quite a few children who eat way too many sugary things develop a zinc deficiency. Zinc's about healthy sex. It's really important. Selenium the same. The classic aphrodisiac food in England used to be oysters. Still is oysters. Why? Because they're full of zinc and selenium more than any other food.
Right.
So another big one is iodine deficiency.
I was going to ask you about that because I'd read that as saying magnesium and iodine were the two things that I'd heard that we are deficient in normal foods. So
Well,
yeah, do tell me about that. And I've got some little pot of your iodine here.
so you've got a year's supply there, a
Oh, right.
year's worth, right?
Wow. In one little pot.
Yes. Now, there are countries around the world that don't need iodine. The Japanese are probably the prime example because they're getting so much iodine because they eat seaweed for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Seaweed and sea fish both are full of iodine. And if you're near the coast, iodine is made in the sea by the breakup of seaweed. And so if you're really on the coast, you're probably breathing iodine. But the Japanese, for instance, don't have a word in their language for menopause. They don't have it. Breast cancer is very, very rare. Why? All the iodine. All the iodine from all the seaweed. Is eating seaweed enough to remedy an iodine deficiency? Not in the short term. You'd need to do it quite a while. But if you want to remedy an iodine deficiency, then a couple of drops of iodine is a way to go. So the Japanese have the equivalent of 2 drops of iodine per day, and it is so protective, it's ridiculous. So there are so many ways to know if you've got an iodine deficiency. One of them would be dry skin. One of them would be walking into a room and forgetting why you walked in. Brain fog, just not being able to think clearly, temperature out of control, menopausal symptoms, iodine deficiency. Now, if children are low on iodine, they can have a low IQ. It's quite serious. Even the doctors recognize this. You've probably heard about a cretinism. That's mental retardation. Even the doctors know that's iodine deficiency in the mother.
Gosh, that's very. I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Have you got a book? Can people purchase a book with all this information in? Because as soon as you start talking like that, you begin to think, gosh, yes, that's not quite me, but I could be in a different thing. I guess that's where a consultation is, where you can sort of, with somebody like yourself, would actually work out exactly what people require. But as soon as you start saying that about one product, you think, yeah, right, okay, I need to glug that. I need to glug the other. Because, presumably people can just, well, I said that earlier about overdosing, but presumably you could be a bit too enthusiastic. Perhaps that's the right term.
Why knowledge is vital. And I don't have a book, so I'm really not inclined writing-wise, or I don't feel I do it very well. But I have made lots and lots of videos.
Yes. Oh, well, that's the best thing then.
Yeah. Because once you realize that, hang on, really, could you stop menopause? Can you protect yourself against breast spelt with a K cancer? Is that possible with something that costs 20 quid a year? It's just ridiculous. Now, you used to be able to buy iodine in the chemist up until about maybe 15 years ago when they banned the sale of it. Now,
oh, yeah, because I remember on cuts and bruises, my mum would come out with this very sort of deep brown stuff and stick it onto a cut and a bruise, get the iodine out. So I never thought that you would take it internally.
Oh, yeah. And doctors still use iodine in surgery before they cut you open. They paint you with iodine because iodine is massively protective. I mean, look at it this way. The whole blood goes through the thyroid every few minutes, say. Now, if you've got enough iodine in there, it is so protective against pathogens, it's crazy. There you've got a bacteria or parasite or whatever it might be. Our natural way to protect ourselves against those things is partially the thyroid, which, because the most iodine in the body is in the thyroid, and it knocks out pathogens if you've got enough of it. The second place in women that is the place with the most iodine are the breasts. So it begins to make sense as to why the stuff is protective. So as people get older, particularly women, some of them get thyroid issues. and the doctor will put them on a synthetic thyroid hormone, which is basically T4, which stands for thyroid. The T is sorry, I'm getting mixed up. The thyroid hormone. Okay, 200 years ago, if you went to the doctor, they didn't know what was wrong with you, they would give you iodine. If you had a thyroid issue, they would give you iodine. It's been known for a couple of 100 years that if you have a thyroid issue, it's probably a lack of iodine. And if that failed, they'd give you a bit of desiccated, dried thyroid from an animal's thyroid gland. But then as soon as with patented medicines, when they realized that iodine costs nothing,
can't make money from it.
They're throwing away the thyroid glands in the animals anyway. They cost nothing, but we can patent a drug and then teach the doctors there is no alternative.
Yes.
I went to see my GP to ask, it was a him specifically, if I realized that I had a thyroid problem and I realized I was low on iodine, would you prescribe it? No, can't, because the standard of care says we give this drug, L-thyroxine, then we give this drug. They're not allowed to tell you broccoli might be good.
Yes. So self-education is clearly the best way if people are au fait with the plants and the foods that have a lot of these products. And then if they feel they're still not quite getting enough, they can turn to the actual supplement itself and get a bit of a boost and all of that. And your range is quite huge, isn't it? I mean, I've got here vitamin D3. That's what we need in the winter, certainly in England, when we're at the moment we've actually got a bit of sunshine. So I'm always regretful that I'm inside as we get into the spring and get into the countryside and get some of that vitamin D. We've got what was this? Immuno.
Yes. So when the stupidity of this so-called illness started, and they stopped me doing vitamin C, I was still selling. I just couldn't tell anybody about it. I started looking into, okay, well, vitamin C isn't enough, really. You want other things as well, ideally. So we put together that blend, which contains, amongst many other things, N-acetylcysteine, NAC. And they've been trying to ban NAC all over the world because they know it works. If you want to strengthen your immune system and not get anything, NAC is brilliant. So we mix that with a little bit of vitamin D, a little bit of vitamin C, a few other things that are in there, lysine, and it's really effective. I'm tending to take one a day just because N-acetylcysteine, for instance, got so many other benefits. Apart from that, it's just an incredible supplement. I feel quite happy because I don't want to take a whole bundle of supplements every day. I want to take as few as possible.
Yeah.
And so the immuno works pretty well from that perspective. And some people have found that they feel the symptoms of something coming on, and they take a lot. Not one or two, but maybe 6 or 8, or if it's the powder version, teaspoonful or two. And some people said, like within minutes, I felt better.
It's incredible how quickly the body can work that way.
Think how quickly you can get ill. You can be fine at lunchtime, and then by 2 o'clock, you've got a streaming cold or something.
Yes.
Right, that's what used to happen to me 20 years ago. So if it can come on that quickly, why can't it shut off that quickly?
Good point. Like it.
You see, I mean, let's say you've got a bacterial infection. Let's say somebody's got bacterial pneumonia. Now, as you know, bacteria reproduces really rapidly. Let's say every couple of hours or something, it's doubled and doubled and doubled. So what if you hit it every 5 minutes? There's a fantastic video. It's on the Secret Health Club. It's also still on YouTube wonderfully, which is called Reverse Pneumonia in 3 Hours.
Good God.
Dr. Andrew Saul takes 2 grams of vitamin C every 6 minutes. Every 6 minutes. Boom. 3 hours later, his pneumonia stopped. People are in hospital for weeks for that. They die from that.
Yes. And we heard. I mean, we've heard, and we can't really say too much about this because of the platform that we're on. But certain people during the last couple of years who were elderly and put onto 2 particular drugs, and their life ended fairly quickly. And yet it can't help feeling now from what you've been saying that those lives perhaps could have been saved if instead of pharmaceutical drugs they'd gone to much more natural supplements that might have been more beneficial.
In my opinion, there's no doubt about it. Nobody's low on a pharmaceutical drug, particularly an mRNA gene altering thing, which isn't a vaccine anyway. And you might need to bleep out some of these words, I know.
Well, I mean, I think people are talking about that, so hopefully we can get that through. It's amazing how one thing that I've learned in the last, I suppose, 5 years is that the body heals itself. And I think we've been taught that we rely on doctors and medicine for health. And yet it's always baffled me, if we've had to rely on those people, how come humanity is where it is today after tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years? How come we just didn't die out pretty quickly when there weren't doctors and these synthetic medicines? So it's always baffled me that when you're ill, people go to the medicine cabinet instead of looking at food or supplements that basically come from plants anyway. So that's something, but it's down to the way that we're schooled, isn't it? These days, we're sort of groomed in one direction, probably for the benefit of big business.
Well, doctors are taught that people's bodies go wrong, and we're going to make you so intelligent and so educated that you're going to be able to do better than the human body. And I don't see it that way at all, because there are only 3 reasons why we get ill in the first place. There's physical damage, you get knocked down by a truck or something. There's the whole toxic poisoning, from when we're at school being told we're not good enough, emotional toxic poisoning, to physical toxic poisoning. Like, the reason everybody's low on iodine is they're drinking and bathing in chlorine, in chlorinated water, which knocks out iodine. If they're using fluoride toothpaste, that's even worse, knocking out the iodine, damaging their brain. So, the 3 reasons we get ill: physical damage, toxic poisoning, and nutrient deficiency. There isn't a 4th reason. And there are only those three reasons.
That's very powerful, Clive. That's very powerful. So if people are interested in approaching you for supplements, presumably you'll be more than happy to sell a few to them.
That's what the Clive De Carle website is for, and I think you'll probably have a link below.
Yes, of course. It will be there by the time this goes up. I mean that's the thing. We spoke before. I hadn't heard of you, and I just wanted to have this conversation because I had all these wonderful products which you very kindly sent me, and we had our chat, and I kept thinking, there's so many here. I don't know which ones in which order, and because it can be, I think, to people who are new to it, very overwhelming, and think, oh, I should be taking all of these every day, and if I did that, it's going to cost me an arm and a leg type thing. But they may not need.
No, they may well not. I don't want to take too many, as I said. It's a question of pinpointing. Well, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
What is the issue? And I have got a video. Put my name and supplements onto Odyssey, probably BitChute. Hopefully, I keep getting chucked off things. Which my name and supplements, and there's a guide as to what does what. Or, if you put my name and selenium or something, you'll see videos, not on YouTube, and you won't find it through Google because they don't like me either. But if you go on to Brave or Firefox, you should be able to just put my name in the supplement you're interested in, and there should be a video explaining why you want it and so on. But there are keys. Selenium is one of the ultimate detoxification agents. So it's so much so that some people who've been on doctor's drugs, ADHD medication for 20 years, find in 3 days they're off it. Methadone, selenium in quite large amounts for just 3 days. Loads of people have come off methadone. Selenium is incredible if you have an addiction issue. Then, I know it's not this country, but the whole Ohio, eastern coast of America, they need glutathione. The most important thing that our body does to detoxify is made in the liver. It's glutathione. You can get IV drips of glutathione and glutathione supplements, but you wouldn't want to do those long term. So I've got a supplement called Glutathione Builder, I think it's called. And what it is a selection of amino acids and the various materials that the liver needs to make glutathione like mad. So anybody who is poisoned, doesn't matter really what the poison is, needs to look at how to get the toxins out. And my website is basically divided into three. There's how to get the toxins out and how to get the good stuff in. Often they're the same thing, but what you want to do is to get the toxins out without feeling bad while you're doing it. And I've got a lot of videos about detoxification and how to do it without hurting yourself, because some people want to do a really fast detox, but that could be bad because you might get the poisons out into the bloodstream too quickly and maybe not have good enough bowel function, good enough liver function to mop them up. So what happens with some people, they try to detox too fast, they feel awful, and it just goes back in again. And so again, it's really important to understand how much to take. I wish I could put more information on my website, but they don't allow me to. Some years ago, the government has made me change my website over and over and over again. So at one point I had the word cancer. They said, well, you can't have that. So I reduced it to C ... They came back, no, you can't have that. We know what you mean. It's just ridiculous. So there are other websites out there that absolutely say everything and have videos and so on. But I got a letter from the government in 2022 that I wasn't allowed to use the naughty words. They actually banned me from using the naughty words. I just think I'm the only person who got banned for using the C word.
And that tells you something, doesn't it? That you were onto something. That you know, why are they going to ban you unless it's actually not very beneficial from their point of view, and that usually comes down to money. I think that the big takeaway I get from our conversation, and from many of the conversations I've had with many of the guests that I get, is this business about self-education is so important. Not necessarily trusting official areas, but just do a little bit of your own research and taking back responsibility for so much of your life, and in this case, health, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's living your own life. So why do we always farm it out to somebody else to prescribe when we could take more responsibility? Is that fair? Do you think that's a good thing?
It's essential. It really is essential. And if people realized how powerful some of these supplements are, then you'd want to stock up on some of them in case of an emergency. Can I run through just a few examples?
Please do.
Not necessarily supplements, but about, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that, I realized that the brain is made of cholesterol, right? And so people who've been following the low-fat diet, trying to avoid rich animal fats and so on, they're the ones now with dementia and Alzheimer's. So I remember I gave a talk where I said, look, coconut oil, if granny's got Alzheimer's, mum's got Alzheimer's, whatever it is, try coconut oil. I recommend to this woman 6 tablespoonfuls a day. So put some in the porridge in the morning. And anyway, 12 weeks later, she rings up and said that she'd reversed 2 years of Alzheimer's dementia in her mother, because 2 years ago she could no longer speak to her mum on the phone. It was a ridiculous waste of time. Now, and she only managed 4 tablespoonfuls of coconut oil every day. 12 weeks later, speaking to mum on the phone like she used to.
That is incredible.
We built the brain with cholesterol. It used to be cream of the crop, fat of the land, the fatted calf, right? Fat used to be thought of as healthy. When I was young, a good steak had lots of fat marbling through it.
And dripping and things like that.
People are educated that lean steak, you can't make a good brain on lean steak. You can put on some muscle, but so people are so deluded about almost everything. And so how can you correct some of these things? Well, the first product that I wanted to make was a soil-based mineral product. So if you think about, let's say, the ancient forest, you dig down far enough, everything that's ever lived or died is in that soil.
Mm.
Leaf, every bud, every insect. And so the soil from certain places has been concentrated. There are certain places where it's just incredibly concentrated. And I discovered this mine, well, it's actually almost on the surface in America. It's only about half a mile. And they just dig the soil out and they run water through it, nothing else. And out comes a little bottle, the same size as the iodine bottle, which lasts 4 months. It's called Fulvic Minerals. You should have one there, a black label.
Here it
Yeah,
is.
Fulvic, Fulvic Minerals. So I was studying with a K, answer cures around the world, and the Chinese were using this. And I started sending off for samples, and big bottles arrived, and I felt zero. Then I got one of this one from this tiny half-mile plot, and I woke up the next morning and I felt different. Really weird. I'm not very sensitive to stuff, actually. But this day I woke up and my whole body felt different. It was really weird. And I gave it to a friend who was 3 months pregnant. I said, this would be good for you. And I'd studied it. And she rang me up 3 days later. She said, oh, my bad morning sickness has stopped. I'm not saying it's the cure for it, but
No.
nevertheless, in her case, she must have been missing some minerals that this balanced natural mineral supplement from the soil gave her. And maybe 20% of people, 25% of people feel it. Most people don't. But it is incredible for detoxification. Incredible. It is great for the pH of the cells. It literally goes into the cell wall and expands it, allowing for it to go in and toxins to come out. It charges up the cell with energy. I mean, I could go on and on about fulvic minerals. They're not a proper multi-mineral because with magnesium, you need a lot. You can't fit a month's worth in a little bottle. But the trace elements, the tiny elements, and I once heard a biochemist saying, well, look, you've got elements in fulvic minerals like yttrium, which is a mineral, which nobody's really ever heard of. But the human body doesn't use yttrium. But it turns out that the microbiome, the friendly bacteria in the body, that uses yttrium. And as most people's bodies have been damaged gut-wise by taking a drug, for me it was an antibiotic, but most drugs damage the natural bacteria, which is our immune system. We're outnumbered 10-1 by bacteria. Human cells, bacteria, we are mainly bacteria. So you want to look after you.
Make sure you got the right bacteria.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so eating processed food is not good for that. Eating food like our ancestors did. I mean, how did they get through a cold winter? Animal products and preserved things. In Germany or something, it might have been sauerkraut. That's full of friendly bacteria. Natural yogurt, all sorts of materials that have the good bacteria that most of us are actually lacking. So anybody's got gut issues. One of the cheapest ones, one of my favorites you can buy on like eBay for 10 quid, is organic kefir grains, Kefir, kefir. You see it for sale in bottles in stores, but that's normally too sweet and isn't that great. But you can make it yourself, and the very stuff you make it with grows. It's just incredible. So years ago, I was really into water kefir, and I got a load. And a client I had diarrhea for 9 months. I mean, that's seriously dodgy. You don't want to do that.
9 months.
A lot of nutrients. And he tried all sorts of things. And I said, look, I'm going to give you some fulvic minerals. I gave him some magnesium and iodine, a few basics. And I gave him some water kefir to drink that I'd pre-made. 3 days later, rings me up, diarrhea had stopped. 9 months, 3 days, water kefir.
Wow.
And so sometimes these things are amazing. I've had other people who have taken vitamin C in as I've said, quite taking little amounts, a gram or 2 grams, several times a day. I had one guy he got so weak he couldn't walk more than about 100 yards. One day later, walking a mile. I mean, this isn't going with everybody, obviously.
No.
But there's most of what I talk about is not new information. It's what the doctors used to do in many cases prior to the drugs and the re-education of doctors. I mean, one of my favorite things is Tesla technology. Not many people know that Tesla, who was once the most famous scientist in the world, invented 3 healing machines. And I was working with a medical doctor some 20 or 18 years ago, and he told me about Tesla and the healing machines and how they were in virtually every hospital in the world. Dentists used them because you could get people out of pain with the cocaine electrode. I can show you the cocaine electrode.
Cocaine electrode.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the cocaine electrode that dentists would have used. In some cases, you could get maybe 5 minutes of anesthesia. This would be a gum electrode. And there were different shapes of different sizes of shapes of the gums. So anyway, the doctor said, "Well, you should buy one of these old machines. You'll find one." And the first machine I tracked down was a diathermy machine. And again, these up until the late 30s, these were in hospitals as a normal thing. They were in, you probably know, touring around England, that there were spas everywhere. And these were big buildings, and they used diathermy to reverse disease. And so I started off with a big machine. Then I realized that actually there are advantages to smaller machines. And now, with about 6 people around the world, we hunt down the best of them from 20s and 30s were probably at the peak. And so we restore them, and they have to be restored because a 100-year-old piece of kit, probably not in its best condition. And over the years, my main restorer has been at it now for 20 years. So he's the world's leading expert on how to restore these things. And I've got a video on the Secret Health Club where I get 34 people out of pain in a row in less than 5 minutes.
Good God.
With a 100-year-old piece of kit. Now, if anybody's interested in this, if you go to join the Secret Health Club, I believe that all information should be free. So everything that's on the Secret Health Club can be found on my Odyssey channel or BitChute or Rumble or whatever it is, but it's not that easy. But so I charge money for the Secret Health Club, but it's something we work. I've got a staff and we work to make it better all the time. But for £1, you can join the section which tells you about the Tesla machines. And the reason I'm doing it this way is I can tell the truth.
Yes.
Because I'm not easy to find. Anyway, so for £1 you can join it, and if you're interested, you can write to us, and we can tell you about the machines because they're incredible. I mean, how this information got lost, how a lot of this information got lost, is beyond me.
Yes. And it is time it came back out again.
Well, it is because it's so cheap. One of the reasons they took these machines out of hospitals was that they interfered with radios at that time. The radio frequency of these machines was long wave, was a lot of radio. And they switched the technology to shortwave. They went to valve technology with the big diathermy machines in the hospitals. And they never worked the same. And then they could use them as radio transmitters. So at the start of the Second World War, they took them all out because they were afraid that spies, they're massive big machines, hospital ones, massive big Tesla coils. And how they work is resonance. You have 2 Tesla coils, and one is much bigger than the other, but they resonate. And with resonance, you can pretty much get every frequency. It's incredible. So later technology, they used to dial up separate frequencies for different things. But Tesla's system is so simple, so incredible. And there's nothing in modern day that I've found that compares. Over the years, I've tried all sorts of technologies. I like technology. But this stuff, amazing.
Well, there you go. How about that? It just goes to show the old knowledge is very much superior in many cases than a lot of the new knowledge. And maybe there's a and using the 2 bits of knowledge. It's a shame that the more commercial platforms won't let you speak about it. But as you say, it is all there on your website. Well, we're sort of into quite a bit of time here, so I'm going to wrap it up and say a big thank you, Clive. There will be links to your website, and people can go and do that. And if anything, one of the other takeaways is to go for a quality product rather than a mass-produced product. But I think that's pretty much common sense anyway. But Clive, thank you so much for taking us through all of that and the importance and reminding us that our body can be looked after, that there's an alternative way. We don't have to go to the doctors and stuff, because trust in that has declined thanks to the pandemic. But maybe there is a silver lining in all of that, that people now will start to look elsewhere for their health remedies.
Well, I hope so. Over the years, I have taught a few doctors, how I do it, so to speak. And I hope that a lot of doctors will suddenly be seeing the light and think, well, okay, I might be taking a massive drop in salary conceivably, but I've got to do it for moral, ethical reasons.
Yeah.
Most people, I would say, if they had a choice, they might want a natural practitioner who's had the medical experience as well. That could be valuable.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. That's why, it's not just returning to the ark, as it were. It's knowing both and taking the best of each. Clive, thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed that. Do have a look at Clive's website and decide if it's for you. In the meantime, I will be back with some more interviews coming up. But thank you again, Clive. And until next time,
thank you.
Goodbye.